What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, I want to give you guys a quick market update as Bitcoin is continuing to push to the upside, sitting at about $107,000 right now. So I want to take a look at the charts with you guys, show some of those bearish signals we were looking at that wound up getting stepped on. And if you've been watching the live streams and keeping up with these market updates, you guys know in a bull market with these bearish signals, we almost expect them to get stepped on. So in today's video, guys, I want to talk about the bullish case here. If we continue up, how high can we go? I'm going to talk about those upper targets as well as those bearish signals that we looked at, pretty much anticipating them to get stepped on, because this is typically what we see in a bull market. We see the money flow come out on certain time frames only to fake out into the red, come right back up into the green, continuing to put in higher lows. And we were able to use some of these bearish signals almost as a reverse indicator calling for new all-time highs. So I want to talk about those signals that we looked at on the chart as well as this fractal we've been watching that is playing out eerily similar to the last bull market. And of course, I'll cover those upper targets with you guys and just give you my general thoughts on price action. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into the charts. Let's get into it. So guys, here we are on the Bitcoin chart, and as you can see here, Bitcoin is just continuing to grind to the upside here, regardless of the bearish signals we were looking at last week. And if you guys remember back to last week, we were looking at things like this weekly red dot sitting on market cipher B. It was about to confirm over the weekend. We wound up confirming that signal, but as we were looking at this red dot, we know that in bull markets, typically these red dots do not really give us much of a push to the downside, and oftentimes Bitcoin will just step on these signals and continue putting in higher lows and continue pushing to the upside. Now, recently, we have been looking back to a fractal here on the charts. I'll come on over to the daily here. We have been pulling this fractal back from November and December of 2020. I have pulled this pattern from the previous bull market and brought it over to our current price action, where we are seeing almost the same exact consolidation pattern where prices come up, put in a high, got a little drop to the downside. We even got a little bit of a bearish divergence here on the daily time frame. But what happened, although a bearish divergence on the daily is typically a very bearish signal, what happened here, we put in the higher high on price action, lower highs on our momentum waves. We even had money flow coming out a bit here. But what happens, Bitcoin comes in and just puts in another higher low, holding that bullish trend and squeezing to the upside in some kind of an ascending triangle pattern here, where we have a flat top of resistance and we have the higher lows being created on our price action here. And typically you will see these patterns coil up and give us that squeeze to the upside. And this is what we were looking at last week, anticipating potentially the same thing to happen where we are now currently in our price action. So if I come on over here to the current price action, I'll pull up that fractal here that we have. And this is what we were looking at, guys, last week before we got the next push to the upside. You guys can see this is a very, very similar pattern where we came up, we started consolidating, we got some drops to the downside, but Bitcoin continued, just like in 2020, continued to put in those higher lows, regardless of the divergences, regardless of the money flow coming out, which, funny enough, guys, on the 8-hour, another thing we were looking at as some kind of a potential bearish signal was this 8-hour money flow on market cipher B coming to the downside here. But literally, as we see this happen, we go back to 2020 and we see we actually had this same exact thing happen in 2020, where we got that last push to the downside to put that higher low in. Money flow on the 8-hour faked out into the red and then came right back into the green before breaking the high. So we had this very similar fractal. We have all the bearish divergences, all the money flow crossovers into the red faked out here to put in that higher low. And on top of that, the one other thing we were looking at here on our current price action was a potential 2-day bearish divergence that we had looking to print here. As you can see, we had that green dot printing last week. If we were to see that continue to confirm, we were going to anticipate a potential formation of a bearish divergence on the 2-day. And you might be saying, Frankie, how did you use that to predict a push to the upside? Well, very simply put, guys, if we were going to see the momentum waves do this and put in a potential bearish divergence, first, before we get that bear div, we're going to have to see the highs broken, right? And what happened? We printed that green dot, we confirmed it, and we wound up coming and breaking the highs in a very similar pattern here, where you have somewhat of a flat level of resistance on top with the higher lows being created, coiling price up for that squeeze up to higher prices. And we did have some very specific targets up here. We are hitting some of them right now. So I'm going to break down the local price action now and show you the resistance that we're hitting, as well as some of those bigger targets. If we see this pattern continue, even on the lower time frames, guys, Bitcoin is just continuing to hold these higher lows and continue pushing up in this weird slow grind. So we take a look at the local price action here, guys. Obviously, we had our older volume profile that we were trading around in somewhat back here, and then we wound up breaking out, flipping this level to support before seeing money flow come back into the green, indicating that the trend would continue to the upside very likely, and we wound up coming up and breaking that high. And we did have local levels of resistance above. Let me go ahead and pull those up for you guys right now. Now, the first level of resistance we were looking at was this Fibonacci extension sitting at about $105,312. You guys can see we did push up into that target, got a little bit of a bearish reaction, but once again, only to come down and put in a higher low and continue breaking structure to the upside, putting a new all-time high after a new all-time high, getting another one today, sitting at about $108,450. So we are just seeing those new all-time highs continue to come in here, but we wound up smashing that target, flipping it to support, coming in making a new all-time high. But now we are coming into some higher targets. Now, if I pull up this next Fibonacci extension level, you can see we are hitting another fib level at about $108,000. This was a level that we front ran yesterday. We actually looked at this on the live stream last night. We actually barely front ran it, but what happened? We got that correction, and then we put in the higher low, and we finally came in and tapped this level before getting another drop to the downside. And to be honest here, guys, finding trade setups in a situation like this is somewhat difficult when price is just kind of slowly grinding to the upside. Now, if this trend does continue and we are just going to keep grinding up, putting in those higher lows, breaking structure to the upside, the next major target that I will be looking at, guys, is going to be around $110,000. If we break 108K and we're able to get above here, flip it to support, the next big target's going to be sitting at this Fibonacci extension at about $110,588. Now, these are somewhat local targets. This one is not too far away at about 3% to the upside. So this is the next technical local target, 110K. But for the most part, guys, we looked at these levels on the live stream yesterday. If I go ahead and pull up some of these upper levels, guys, the next major target that I will be looking at, and I'm going to show you guys why this is the specific target, but between about $111,171 leading all the way up to about $114,271 is going to be the next major target for Bitcoin, in my opinion. If this uptrend continues, I'm definitely going to be looking up here because not only do we have Fibonacci extension targets up here, we also have our spider lines sitting right in this exact zone, not only on our Heikin-Ashi spider lines, but also if we pull up our regular spider lines, you can see even above this Fibonacci extension, these spider lines really have a pretty significant gap here, right? We came up to our first targets. We have some spider lines here. Once we're able to get above these and hold them as support, there isn't really much above. Like I said, 110K is going to be a pretty local target. However, that's getting very close to this larger target anyway. But if we're able to flip these spider lines, which right now, you know, these trend up over time, obviously, but right now they are sitting at around $107,400. If we're able to get above here and flip this to support and break these highs once again, we may be able to get that move closer to this larger target, starting at about 110K, and then eventually working our way into this larger zone, sitting between 111 and 114K with this spider line, again, trending up over time, so this level will change slightly as time goes on, depending on how quickly we get up there. But this spider line is flying right through the middle of this Fibonacci extension zone, making it somewhat of a confluent area to look for price to get gravitated to if we wind up getting above the rest of this resistance. And again, you can see here, there's no spider lines in this zone. There's no significant Fibonacci extensions other than that 110K level, which again is still sitting pretty close to the upper target. So I'm really looking, if price can continue putting in higher lows here and breaking structure to the upside in the medium term, I will be looking for price to potentially come up to these targets. Now, obviously, it would be nice to see Bitcoin just continue putting in higher lows and continuing up to these targets. However, I do want to cover some of the key levels of support because right now, guys, I am not holding a position as I was in a long position down here off the retest with the premium Discord on this value area high. Unfortunately, I entered the position and then wound up getting stopped out at break even. So typically when we're in situations like this, I'm happy to let price push up, enjoy the gains from my long position. But right now, simply put, I got stopped out at break even on that trade, so I'm not even holding a long position. I am just more inclined to wait for key levels to get hit for higher probability setup. So right now, I'm just letting the dust settle, looking for these higher targets to potentially get hit. And then for more sound trade setups, guys, I really want to see either a much higher target get hit, or I want to get a bigger correction to the downside to either look for new long positions or even wait for a correction. If we start to break some key levels, we can then potentially start to look for some short positions on the way back down. However, just to show some of these lower support levels to the downside, if we get a bigger correction down, I will be looking down to this previous value area with the value area high starting at about $100,000. This is, in my opinion, going to be the most important level of support to hold. We have a $100,000 psychological level, and as long as we're able to stay above this, I do think that we are likely to stay in a very bullish environment here. I know a lot of people got scared on this wick to the downside, but if you guys watch the live streams, you will know we looked at this push to the downside and we understood that a lot of this push to the downside was just a big liquidation event, not closing any candle bodies, invalidating any higher lows. So you can see this wick does not count to break market structure. We had just simply wicked down, closed back above, and then we wound up putting in higher lows and continuing up. So this was not a bearish wick. As a matter of fact, on the live stream, we were talking about how this could be a bullish sign after watching out a bunch of long positions to continue up into new all-time highs. So if we do wind up getting a bigger correction to the downside, the big levels of support that I will be looking at is going to really start down here at about $100,000. If we pull our Fibonacci retracement from this swing low up to the swing high, you can see that we do have a golden pocket pretty confluent with this zone. Now, this is somewhat of a big zone. We have this little area of consolidation here where we did wind up pulling a little bit of a volume profile here back when we were trading at these prices, and this does start at about $102,000. So really, in my opinion, between $102,000, it's going to be an if this then that statement. If we come down there, I will start to be looking for support between about $102,000 all the way down to the value area high / golden pocket retracement, dipping down to $100,000 to $99,000. And even if we slip this level slightly, again, $100,000 is going to be a key level, not only because it's a psychological level, but it's also a value area high of a range. And we know oftentimes when we get sucked back below these value area highs and we cannot get back above, sometimes you can get accepted back into that volume profile. Now, in this specific scenario, in such a bullish environment, even if I draw this trend line, I am not a huge trend line person. However, if you do draw this kind of trend, if we did get a bigger pullback here, again, you have the value area high sitting here at 102K. And then if you continue down, that value area high is your next key level at 100K. And then if we dip into these zones here, guys, this could be between the value area high and POC, which, by the way, is sitting at about 98K. Is really the big zone of support, right? Because really the doorway to lower prices, in my opinion, here is going to be losing this POC, and that would very likely call for a move closer to the value area low, sitting at about $90,384. But again, not calling for that to come in, but this is just how I'm handling price action. If we got a bigger pullback, I'm really starting to look for support down here, again, between about 102 and I would call it about $98,000. And I know that's a really big zone of support, but like I said, we're going to be playing it level to level. If we come down here, we may be able to tap that golden pocket before continuing to hold those higher lows and continue moving to the upside. And that, again, of course, is if we don't just continue to grind to the upside, which obviously you guys now have those upper targets between $111,000 and $114,000. So with all that being said, guys, I just wanted to jump in here. I know we're making new all-time highs, but to be honest, we're just making them by a few bucks here. So it's somewhat exciting, but also kind of just we're still somewhat sitting where we were yesterday. But I just wanted to drop this update for you guys, give you the key levels, and kind of just give you an idea of how I'm handling the price action. So if we get the bigger pullback, you guys know those support levels I'm looking at. And if we continue this trend to the upside, which obviously is very aggressive, I will be looking for price to come into those higher targets. I'm just sitting on my hands, letting the dust settle, and sitting patiently waiting for price to come into my next trap to look for those confirmations to take our next trade. So I hope that helps you guys out. And with all that being said, that's all the time I got for today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Frankie Candles out. Go. At the top of the class on a roll, and it's time to run it up, yeah, you know.